Stephen is a senior member of the AAT. Although he tells me he's only part-time, he works pretty much full-time. He's based in Sydney. He was first appointed to the AAT in 2006. From 1995 to 2008, he was an indirect tax partner at KPMG. Prior to joining KPMG, Stephen worked in the Australian Taxation Office for 12 years in both Sydney and Canberra. He's a nationally accredited mediator and frequently conducts conciliation conferences and other ADR processes in the tribunal. And he has sat on several GST cases with which you'll be familiar, including Vidler, Waverley Council, Luxottica and Qantas. So I'd like you to welcome Stephen.
Thanks, Jeff. I've known Robert Olding for about 25 years. He's not here. He should be here. I've known him for about 25 years. I think we first worked together in the tax office in Canberra in about 1986 in the sales tax branch. And then he and I both left the tax office separately and we became partners together at KPMG. In about May this year, Robert rang me and he said, "Would you like to give a presentation at the GST conference in Melbourne?" And that was way off in September. I thought, oh yeah, I'll do that. That sounds all right. When the papers came out, I was told that I had to talk for an hour. That's pretty tough. And I also found out that it was on the afternoon of the second day, after probably a big night for a lot of you last night. And you've all had a big lunch and you've filled up on desserts, and I'll be doing my best to keep you awake this afternoon. That's one reason that I'm indebted to Robert Olding. The second reason I'm indebted to Robert Olding is that just before the lunch break, I was sitting there and he was sitting there, and we got up after the last session. We were just about to walk out and Robert said to me, "You know, just recently I read a book." I think he said the book was called Brain Rules. I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "What I read in the book is that you have to, if you're giving a presentation like this, you have to keep your audience engaged at least every 10 minutes. Emotionally engaged is what he said, emotionally engaged." You've seen the topic. Okay. You heard in the introduction that I have been involved in a few of the significant GST cases, and one of them is Qantas. I wasn't the only member of the tribunal that sat on Qantas. I sat with the president of the tribunal. I wasn't planning to say anything about Qantas during this presentation, and I think I may stick to that. But in putting the presentation together and working out how I should present, I had to consider some of the things that were said about the tribunal decision at first instance. But I thought I'd break from tradition and not, dare I say, do this all back to front. So there's a couple of topics that I want to talk about today. The first segment of the paper is what I've called the rest of the iceberg. That's all the stuff that you don't see that we do in the tribunal, because very little finds its way to hearing and published decision. I'll spend a bit of time, I think, talking about the nature of AAT proceedings. We've already had some discussion of that from Jeremy earlier today, but I'll give you some of my insights into that. And if we have time, I'll give you some tips on running a case in the AAT from my experience of seeing cases run in the AAT. It may be some worthwhile stuff that I've got for you there. Now, I was surprised when I did some research in relation to what we do in GST in the tribunal. We actually finalised last year 139 applications in GST. We categorise, we put GST applications into two different categories in the tribunal. There are things called GST assessment and penalty decisions, which are that's the bulk of the numbers that we see. But we've got a second category category called GST administration decisions. Anyway, whichever of those categories they go into, we finalised last year 139 applications.